Okay, hello everybody, Thijs here again, and I'm doing another card review, my weekly card review, about the new cards that came out from the Old Gods. And the first one I'm gonna talk about is the Ravaging Ghoul, and I'm actually pretty excited about this card. It's a 3 mana 3/3, so stats wise, if you don't look at the effect yet, it has decent stats. 3 mana 3/3 is okay, you will not play it just for 3 mana 3/3, but with a good effect, the card can be good. So what is the effect? Deal 1 damage to all other minions, and knowing that Despite is rotating out, deal 1 damage to all other minions can be a really good concept for Warrior. The Warrior has to wall it, so you kinda have a minion here that has a wall-it effect directly in it, because it is a battle cry. So once you played it, you let it immediately go off. And the cool thing about Warrior is that they have a lot of cards that just work really well with dealing 1 damage to everything. With the defensive Armorsmith, with an Acolyte of Pain, there are a lot of ways that even the 1 damage to your own minions provide you well. So can we see this card? Can it be in a Patron deck? It might be hard to combine this card with a Patron because it's an 8 mana combo. You have to go Patron, let's say Enrage the Patron, and then you go with this Ghoul, and it will be hard to put that combo off. So you might see it as just a minion you want to play. The only problem that you will have with this card is that Warrior has so many good cards they want to play. They don't want to play like these okay cards. You want to either go for the really strong weapons, the strong removal, and the strong minions. And with Muster of Battle rotating out, with Implosion rotating out, this card might just be less good against your opponent. It might be okay for yourself, but not having that direct effect, I'm not sure how it will work out. With the Despite, you can just hold it on and wait as long and do some extra stuff. With this card, you cannot really do it with your Patron, so you don't have like the offensive way you can play this card. That is what I'm missing. So I will say this card might be a good answer against some aggro decks. I think you will see it testing out in Warrior, but at the end I just don't think it will get the place in the Patron Warrior or in the Control Warrior deck. I think the Control Warrior just can run so much better cards, and I think a Patron Warrior misses the offensive way of this card a bit. But, and yeah, it might just be so much worse in the meta with no Muster of Battle or Implosion that the card is just considered not being strong enough for Warrior. I like the card, I like the concept, but a bit scared that at the end this card will not be strong enough to make it in the Warrior decks. Probably a really good card for Arena, by the way. Okay, and here we have the Mire Keeper, and as a Druid player, I could not dream of a better Druid card, I'm just super excited about this card. 4 mana 3/3. So if we look at the stats, we are paying maybe 2 mana too much for this card. If you could play in 2 mana 3/3, you will probably play it. But then we have to choose one effect. Summon a 2/2 slime or gain an empty mana crystal. So what we have here is it's kind of a shredder just for Druid. We are having a 4 mana 3/3, not a 4 mana 4/3, but still a really strong minion, and summon a 2/2. So you have more of either a consistent shredder drop out of it with the 2/2 slime, or gain an empty mana crystal, and you just have a wild growth into this card. So we have here 4 mana 3/3 that you can either play as a shredder, or you play it as just a weak 4 drop with a wild growth into it. I think this card is going to be really good. I think this can just get, you will play this in your Druid decks. The way you can ramp up with this card, the way you can, if you already have enough ramp and the flexibility of it to just make a shredder from it, it can also be, like, this card is even better in Ramp Druid, and maybe even super good in decks like Astral Druid. But just in general, in the mid-range Druid, this is just the replacement Druid is looking for the Shredder. Shredder is rotating out, perfect replacement. Like, it's just a Shredder. Like, maybe a bit weaker, and like your opponent knows what comes out. Or like you get it directly on the board. But why is directly so much worse? Like, just summon them 4 mana 3/3 and you get the 2/2 stats. Like, it comes immediately And if you are having a really expensive hand, you ramp up. Like, the flexibility of this card in the way you can ramp, in the way you play the game, in the way you want the tempo. So flexible in matchups. Even more flexible than Shredder. A bit worse, maybe. But I would say by summoning him directly 2-2 and Death Rattles rotating out, you want the direct control on board. So I think this is a really good Druid card. And you will see this in Druid decks. It will replace the Shredder, in my opinion. From what I know now and what I see, I think this is going to be the 4-drop for Druid. So we have here the Hammer of Twilight, 5 mana weapon 4-2 for the Shaman class. And Death Rattle summon a 4-2 Elemental. And this card is a bit hard to review. It's a really cool concept where if a weapon, you destroy your own weapon and you actually gain a minion from a weapon. It's a really interesting concept. It's really hard for me to review. So what we have here, 5 mana 4-2. The first cards I'm having in my mind that I can relate it a bit to is like the Deathspite, but by missing the Death Rattle 1 damage of the Deathspite, you pay 1 mana more. I think this card is pretty expensive. You have a 5 mana 4-2. You like 4 damage is a lot of time an overkill on a minion. And it's not like a clean kill, and your opponent can play well about it. And also the 4-2 Elemental, like how much is that worth? A 4-2 Elemental is not worth more than 2 mana, because 2 health dies really easily. I think, and also, like, you take so much damage with this card. I think the card is, like, Shaman can do so much better stuff. Summon 4-2, it's not a good card in an aggro Shaman because Doomhammer is just 10 times better. And in a mid-range Shaman, I think you don't want to play these cards. You have so much better Shaman cards that you can play. This card is so depending on situation, and having a 4-2 Elemental that can die, I think this card is cool. I think it might be worth the stats with having this Death Rattle, but it's so hard to pull off, and getting the value 1 from the Death Rattle and getting the second, and well, getting 1 the value from the weapon, like dealing with 2 minions, and getting the Elemental on board to let it survive somehow. I think this card might be good for, it can be okay for Arena, where value is so important, but in constructed, I think this card is gonna be too slow, and you can just get so much better cards. Like, there are so much good Shaman cards, and weapons are always a weak thing in Shaman. I feel like it's gonna not really work out. I think the card is for sure playable in mid-range Shaman, but I think you will see that at the end you wanna just play the direct minions. I think the card is too slow. For 5 mana you are, like, as a true silver, let's compare it a bit with true silver maybe. And then it might be a bit better. But you really have to go for the control Shaman way to make this card good, because in any aggro or mid-range Shaman, I think the card is gonna be too slow. You don't want these cards, you want the direct stuff on the board. It will be a considerable minion if the meta is really heavy control. If the meta is still any way of aggro or mid-range, this card is too slow, it's too situational of killing a minion, and you take too much damage, simply. So, maybe if the meta is going to be good enough for control, this card can make it. And what do we have here? We have a 9 mana, 9/9, the Blood of the Ancient One. If you control 2 of these at the end, you summon it into the Ancient One. And just to make clear, guys, the Ancient One has 30 attack and 30 defense. So combining 2 of them, you just get a huge Ancient One that is a 30 attack, 30 defense minion. And I mean, it's gonna be pretty cool to play this card, and you will have these cool moments that it works. But there is always still the BGH in the side, and how can you play 2 mana drops and then not dying, or your opponent not dealing with it? Like, you play 2 of these, your opponent either kills you or deals a sick amount of damage, or he clears one of them, and then you are fucked. I think this card is just not good. It's a cool concept. You will have these good ways where it works, but you're just gonna die so often, or he just deals with one. 9 mana 9/9s that don't have a battle cry just don't work. It's too slow. It is too slow. It's not gonna work. I have to be sad about it. You will have these highlights where it will be good, and but 9 mana 9/9 that waits for another 9 mana card to make it work, it's just too slow. It has no battle cry. Compared to Ragnaros that has a direct battle cry and is not even considered being played in decks now because it's too slow. Imagine a 9 mana 9/9. I love it's a really cool card, but it's just not good enough. You need to combine it maybe with Faceless, and then you get like, it goes faster, but it's just too slow. At this point that you can make the point that you can play 2 Blood of the Ancient Ones for 9 mana is already when you won the game. So, cool card. We will get some cool highlights from it. But for Constructed, this card will just be way too slow to be being played. And here we have the Blood Warriors card, 3 mana warrior card, actually announced by my teammate Life Coach. Add a copy of each damage friendly minion to your hand, and it's a really interesting card. It adds a new concept to warrior where you are able to play a really slow warrior decks and still gaining cards without cycling your deck. So you get kind of an Echo of Medivh here for the warrior class, where you add a copy of each damage friendly minion to your hand. It's a situational Echo of Medivh. You pay 1 less mana and your minions have to be damaged. I think the card is way too situational for a warrior. Your warrior doesn't really want to play this card. But maybe there is some fatigue warrior or heavy value warrior deck possible with this card. I think the card is gonna be too situational. It's way too hard to damage your own minions. Like, imagine if 2 minions of yourself are damaged, and then the card is really good. But it's really hard to pull it off, and you have to pay 3 mana for it, and then you get it to your hand. So it will be a way too situational Echo of Medivh. And it's not as powerful as Echo of Medivh. You pay 1 less mana, but yeah, maybe there is that you can get some really fatigue warrior going or heavy value warrior going on, but besides that, this card is super hard to make work. I like the card, but it's super hard to make work. And as Life Coach said, guys, look at the artwork. Super amazing artwork of this card. But yeah, probably way too situational for Constructed. Cannot see this being a good card in any of the warrior decks. It can only work if, like, it is a card that can create decks, like Echo of Medivh can too. You have decks that are made around Echo of Medivh. Maybe I'm missing something, and that's, like, the card has this potential, but in my opinion, still too situational. And what do we have here, guys? 8 mana. I think every hunter dreamed of this card. Call of the Wild. Summon all 3 animal companions. All 3 animal companions gonna be summoned here. You will get the Misha, you will get the Leokk, and more important, you will get an Hover. So let's just first look what that will mean on board. You, getting a Misha, getting a Leokk, getting an Hover is you get an 4/4, well actually a 5/4 taunt. You get a 2 for Leokk, and you get a 5/3 charge. So what you are getting here is a really flexible flexible board where you have a charge and you have a taunt. So this is like a really good response on no matter how you're doing at the board. You can either use the hover to trade on the board, you get a taunt, and you get like a minion that buffs the board. So I think that the concept of getting all 3 companions at one time is really strong. You can do a lot with it. You can just deal damage, you can trade for board, you get a taunt, you gain more time. And for 8 mana, the stats that you are getting is just really strong. When you are having an empty board or a bit behind on board or a bit ahead on board, it doesn't matter. Summoning 3 really flexible minions is just really good. So I really think this card is going to be pretty good in mid-range Hunter. Like 8 mana, and it might be a bit slow, but for a mid-range Hunter, just the everything you're getting, like stats-wise you are getting a lot. You get a 4-4, you get a 4-2 and a 2-4, what is kind of 10-10 stats for 8 mana, but you have the flexible of Leok buffing, you have the flexibility of having a charge, and you have the flexibility of having a taunt. So no matter what situation you are in, this card can respond all the time well to your opponent. You are behind, you get a taunt and charge. I think that there's just like the problem is sometimes like in 3 mana animal. If we look at just animal companion, we pay 3 mana, and the card is played in every hunter deck. Now we pay 8 mana for all the 3. Well, it's just pretty good, right? I think this card is just, considering animal companion for 3 mana is already really good. Getting the flexibility this. Like, it might be slow, but the flexibility this for 8 mana. 8 mana is a good cost for this card. I think this card will really make it into mid-range Hunter decks. The card might not look appealing yet because it's considered a spell, but it's a really good board control card. So, and you really know what you can do with this card. I think this is a great card for mid-range Hunter. And what do we have here? Another old god appeared, Yogg-Saron. Hopes and Battle Cry. Give a random spell for each spell you have cast this game. Targets chosen randomly. Like, this is a card that is just so hard to evaluate. Like, people try to evaluate this card already by what are the outcomes with your spells, and I mean, it's an amazing concept. Like, that's the first thing I want to say. 10 mana 7/5 and giving this Battle Cry, I don't even know what's gonna happen. Like, it will have crazy outcomes, but the concept of this card is just gonna be super cool. People are just, I think, will really excited about it by playing this card. The RNG in this card is insane. So this is almost impossible for me to evaluate how good it is. I think because of the big RNG factor and the bad stats it has, you will not see it in Constructed. But you will have this is a card you're gonna have a lot of fun with. Give a random, like, just having this minion, I think if 9 or 10 mana cards have to be viable, they at least need to have a Battle Cry. And that's what this one has. And I mean, give a random spell for each spell you have played. So imagine a deck you play 20 spells. Or let's start with 5 or 10 spells. And you gain, there's gonna be a Clown Fiesta of spells gonna happen where it deals damage to yourself, you draw cards, you get mana crystals, you get minions, you deal damage, you have removal. Like, I don't even know what is gonna happen, but it's gonna be a fun card, right? I mean, and it's also like, each spell is gonna target chosen randomly, so you can fireball yourself, you can fireball your opponent, your opponent's minions. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen. It's almost impossible for me to evaluate it. The stats are pretty bad. There is too much RNG for it to be considered in the competitive scene. But I think you're gonna have some really funny games with this card. So definitely excited about the card, but it cannot be consistent for Constructed at all. There is just too much RNG involved in it. But I am so excited. I just love the concept. Come on, So much randomness. So many fun in this card. We'll see it play. And we have here the Spreading Madness. 3 mana, deal 9 damage, randomly split along all characters. Okay, so that is a really heavy Mad Bomber card we kind of have here. We have a Distant Warlock card here that deals 9 damage randomly. So is this card anything close to be viable? There is a really big RNG factor in this card that I really don't like. 9 damage, split along charges. So if you want to evaluate this card, and what Warlock do you want to play this? Maybe you want to play it one-offs in kind of Reno decks. I think this is like, it makes no sense to play in Handlock. In Zoo or something, you might want to use it as a finisher. But why would you do that for 3 mana? Like average, you will probably deal 4 damage to your opponent's face, where you have the Soulfire, and you still need to consider minions from you, your board, and your opponent board. And I think if you play it in Reno and you want to play, let's say you want to play it at turn 3, you have your opponent has 1 minion on board, so you want to average is just going to be in Dark Bomb to the opponent's minion. That's average. And why would you play this card, damaging yourself when it's not important? I think it's just not a good concept for Warlock. It's some pretty... I mean, you will have good outcomes where you deal with a 4 health minion and the other bombs deal with a 1 health minion. But it's so situational. Like, these cards are just... I'm just not a big fan of these cards. It's kind of good maybe as an AoE. But why would you play this card over Demon Wrath? Where you have considered to damage to all your opposing minions. Or over Hellfire that cost 1 mana more. Or over Shadow Flame. Like, as an AoE card, this card you won't play. Because Warlock has way better ways to play removal. There's no way that you want to do something to kill your own board, really. Maybe there are cool concepts, but a lot of death rattles are also rotating out. And as a single removal, it's just worse than Dark Bomb. So the Warlock has just way better cards to deal with it. And the card is just so situational. It's so much RNG that this card is... nobody in competitive Hearthstone will like to play these cards. Just the big factor of RNG is too big here. It's like bigger than a Mad Bomber that is already considered being... a lot of RNG. And it's just worse than the removal from the Warlock. Warlock has better tools to deal with better ways to get AoE on, so it will not be good. I think this card cannot... There is no way that this card will be played in competitive. Maybe there are ways people will like it into Arena, but I still don't like it. I think this card cannot... it's just not good enough. Yeah, fun for Yogg-Saron. Like, you will have a lot of cards, guys, that are fun for Yogg-Saron, but in general, this card will not make it himself. Okay, and here we have a really exciting legendary for the Warlock class. We have Cho'Gall coming into Hearthstone. 7 mana, 7/7. Battlecry. The next spell you cast this turn costs health instead of mana, and these are cards that can really be competitive being played. These are cards that are really good because you get the tempo also. You play in 7 mana 7/7. If you have a lot of cards here and you play this card and you can just play powerful spells with it. The only problem Warlock might have is that there are not too many spells that are working too well with it. Like the best example that from the spell that works the best with it is probably Scything Soul. You play this card, you play your 7 mana 7/7, and your Scything Soul on one of your strong opponent minions, and you basically lose 3 life. you pay 6 health and you gain 3 back. So that's like a good example of doing it. But the tempo you can get with this card is pretty good. Like, imagine that you can also just Shadow Flame the same turn. Like, Shadow Flame for free. Basically playing a 7 mana minion and playing in Shadow Flame for free, 4 health, Scything Soul. I think the card is pretty good. I think it's pretty good. I think it can be a bit slow sometimes because it's still 7 mana 7/7. But knowing that like Dr. Boom is rotating out, it can really fill the 7 slot for Warlock. If there's any weak slot for Warlock, it might be the 7 slot. And Warlock always has the ability to tap, so they are always having cards in hand normally. And in a more Reno lock, I think this card is great. I will play this card probably in Reno lock. In hand lock it might be hard still because you have ways to play really powerful minions for less than 7 mana. But the effect is still pretty great. The only problem is, do you really want to play Scything Soul in hand lock, for example? But I'm a big fan of I think this card is going to be pretty good in Reno lock, where you play the Scything Soul, where you play the Shadow Flame, and even if you like, you don't have to. It doesn't have to be like the most powerful spells. If you can just Dark Bomb, and you actually are playing a 9 mana turn for 7 mana turn, where you just pay 2 lives, it might just be fine. I think this card will be good for Reno lock, and it will be probably too slow for hand lock or any kind of really control heavy locks. But really happy to see these kind of legendaries. Legendaries with battle cries are the legendaries I like the most, because they always have ways to probably get fireball. Not having any battle cry, they are just too slow a lot of times. And here we have the Posited Villager. He looks great, guys. Look at him. Aww. What meta? What? I just like the card, how he looks. Just so cool. 1 mana 1/1. Warlock card, Death Rattle, summon a 1/1 Shadow Beast. So I think this is if the first time I look at this card, I saw this as the replacement for Haunted Creeper a bit, where you are having a minion that is 1 mana less, you pay 1 health for it, and you just get 1 less Death Rattle, 1/1. So you can see this. I think this is a pretty good Zoo card. Knowing that Death Rattles are rotating out, and Zoo has so much abilities to play buff cards like Abusive Surgeon, like Defender of Argus, now with the Peddler, and also with the Power Overwhelming. I think Zoo really likes to play these Death Rattle cards, and considering that the Rubian Egg and Haunted Creeper were always good in Zoo, and this card is just like, I see this as a really good replacement for Haunted Creeper. I see it almost as a Haunted Creeper. If you just look at the card, what is a 1 mana 2/2, the value of the card is already good. And knowing that Zoo can get more value out of this card, I think that this will be the direct replacement for the Haunted Creeper for a Zoo deck, because you can just abuse the Death Rattle so much. Just the power that you can gain by buffing this card, knowing it has already decent value with a 1 mana 2/2, I think this will be a card that people will play over Haunted Creeper, maybe like over Haunted Argent Squires. I'm not sure if you can play two offs, because 1 mana 1/1 is weak, but Zoo can abuse this card really well, and I think you will see this card being played in a Zoo deck if they are not getting better Death Rattles coming out. Okay guys, let's go to the real talk. We have Wisps of the Old Gods here. Card that was actually reviewed by me. Yes, this was my card. And I try to look at the card as positive as I can. And yeah, people were also sad about it that I had to review this card. Because the card is just not that good, guys. No. It's just not the best card that we could get. I would have loved to get a better card. Yeah, it's a sad story. It's a sad story. I did my best promoting the cards, but I think it. Now I can just say I think the card is pretty bad. What do we have here? We have a 7 mana card. We have an a Dark Whispers that summons. Well, it summons 2 Wisps more, but for 7 mana, summoning a full board of Wisps is just too slow. It's even pretty bad stats. 7 mana, 7/7, and yeah, the buff of giving minions +2/+2. I mean, why will that be good? We have the Savage Roar for 3 mana. We have the Power of the Wild that gives +1/+1 for 2 mana. We are paying 5 mana more to get +1/+1. If you compare it to a Power of the Wild. I mean, the card is just so slow. We have so many better cards to get rid of. People consider it, together with the card, what was it? The warrior card, the Tentacle of Arms. People consider it me reviewing one of the worst cards in the set. Well, guys, at least I had the honor to reveal a card. But yeah, the card is so... it's just bad. I mean, it's not good. Maybe there is value in Arena if you have like 2 other cards that you are not having much value cards yet in your Arena run, and the other 2 cards are crap. You might pick it up from time to time. But the summon all the Wisps is too slow. It's not even powerful. For all the mana, you pay 7 mana. And yeah, +2/+2. I mean, you can get +1/+1 from the Power of the Wild. And if you want to use it offensive, you have the Savage Roar. The only deck I can see it being played in is Astral Druid. And you get it from Raven Idol. You get 3 cards from Raven Idol. The other 2 cards are bad, and you pick this one up because you have the whole board to, like, you have 9 mana anyway to play. Then you pick this card. But besides that, the card is not good enough, and the card is just way too overcosted. I don't think even you will play this card for 6 mana, and I don't even know if you will do it for 5 mana. Just way too overcost. And what do we have here? We have a neutral legendary. We have a 9 mana legendary, 5/9, taunt, can't be targeted by spells or hero power. So the powerful effects of this card is that it has taunt and it can't be removed by like an hex or by direct removal. You have to deal with it with minions on board, and I have a bit of a hard time direct reviewing this card. But 9 mana is a lot. Like 9 mana, 5/9. If we will just look at the 5/9 taunt stats, is that worth? That will be a really good 6 drop. Will it be a good 7 drop? It might be worth 7 mana for them. I think it will be a really good 7 drop, just looking at stats. But now knowing, I mean, you can compare it to Bulldifist Ogre, right? That's a 6 mana, 6/7. Consider it just not strong enough for his stats, but okay. And now we have a 9 mana, 5/9. I mean, aren't they just so much better? Like 9 mana is so slow. Like you consider Wreck already being too slow, and you want maybe the 9 mana cards like Alex that has like a direct battle cry on board. I think the taunt is super good actually. When you like taunt is super good when it cannot be targeted by spells. It's super good, but like it's really worth for sure 1 mana. It might be already 2 mana, but like you can also compare it to Ancient of War, right? That's a 7 mana 5/10 taunt. And that's really good. Like, people play that card often. Druid, like, the thing is, Druid has so many good cards that it's not always being played, but it's a really good card. For 7 mana, 5/10 taunt. Now we are paying 9 mana. So we are paying 2 mana more for the can't be targeted by spells and hero powers. I think the only way that this card is good is if you can abuse your mana. Because otherwise it's too slow. I don't think this card can make it in a control warrior, for example, because they have so much better tools too. More consistent tools. It's just not good into the heavy mid-range decks, because they will still deal with it on board. But I like the concept. I mean, maybe I'm missing a point where a heavy taunt that can be super good. I think if it will be 8 mana, it will be good, because it can be targeted by spells is for sure. I think it's worth 1 mana. I think 9 mana, it might just be a bit too much, just be a bit too slow. People play a 7 or an 8 drop before it, and they just trade pretty well with it. If it could be 1 mana less, I think it will be good. It might actually be worth playing in an Astral Druid deck. Because what you want there a lot is taunt, so I can be it. And I can also see, and that's something I'm gonna try out, I can really see a heavy Ram Druid with Astral Communion, like B5, but with so many great legendaries we are getting, with also the Enzot, where you get like a minion all out of your deck on the board. Like, these are great minions to get for free. It's like the best you can almost get, because it also has a defensive tool. So I can see it being a good card. I think he's a bit overpriced, but I might get surprised here. I will not be surprised also seeing this deck work out well, but I think 9 mana is too much. I think it's too much. People play 7 or 8 drop before it, and it's just a bit, it just trades at best then. So we'll see. And I'm gonna for sure try this card out in any kind of Ram Druid. Here, and what do we have here? We have a rogue card, Thistle Tea, announced by my friend the dog. Draw a card, add 2 extra copies of it to your hand. So what do we have here? 6 mana, and for 6 mana we draw a card. So yeah, if we look at that first, it's a pretty crap card. But draw a card, add 2 extra copies of it to your hand. So let's say, it's a really high value card, because you add extra cards into your deck. You are not limited to your 30 cards. That's the good part. You are getting 2 extra copies. The bad part is that you pay 6 mana, and 6 mana for this card is quite a lot. The problem, like one of the problems I have also with this card is the information your opponent is getting. You are drawing a card, your opponent sees this card is created by Thistle Tea, and he knows that you have 2 other Seps in hand, you have 2 other Abysses in hand, you have 2 other Backsteps in hand. Like, he knows what you are having, and that is also a problem for this card. I think the card is too slow. Like, Blizzard has always to be careful with these cards, because there is the preparation and you can prep these cards, but you don't want to draw 3 cards for 6 mana, and getting 3 copies is not good. Like, the flexibility you have with Sprint, like getting different options and fishing for that one option you need, like now you just get like that 1 card 3 times. I don't see it being any good. Your opponent also knows what you're getting, and 6 mana draw 3 cards is just not great. We are paying 3 mana for drawing 2 cards, and now we double the mana to get 1 more card. I don't think that can be any good. It's a worse Sprint, and like, you want to maybe play it in some kind of mill rogue. That is the only way you can do it, but I think this is like too slow for a mill rogue. Like, 6 mana, like adding extra cards, you might even mill yourself more often. I don't think it's I don't think it will be a good card. It's a high value card. If you need extra value for your arena deck, you can pick it up. It will be fine. But besides that, I don't think this card will be safe in any competitive rogue deck. Okay, we actually have the Spanish translation here of the card, but I can translate it because I know the card. It is a 4 mana 1/1. Yes, guys, a 4 mana 1/1. Death Rattle, summon a 5/5. So A really interesting concept, because it's a super slow card, but a really high value card. If we just look at a 4 mana 5/5 is really good, a 4 mana 1/1 is not good, but the value that is made into this death rattle is really high. So slow concept, high value. That's already a big problem in Hearthstone, like the slow cards high value, because they are often just too slow, as I say. But I can see in 4 mana 1/1 still be working decently. You might want to play it into decks that either can taunt it up, that can buff it, like with Abusive Sergeant, Defender of Orgus, Power Overwhelming, great card. So I already like look at the way that it might be working in a Warlock deck. The problem is still, and that is always the problem of these cards, it's so weak to silence. Like 4 mana 1/1, like it's gonna be so weak to silence, and it's gonna be like you are giving away so much tempo. Your opponent might have an empty board at best case, and you want to play powerful stuff. You don't want to play in 4 mana 1/1. You still need to get that trade from his next minion. You're behind on board. Well, then this guy is just going to be ignored, and hopefully you get to get good trade-off. So you need to have like extra buffs for this card to make him really work. And if you can manage that, and if you can make the deck not too slow, it will be good, because the value is really good in the card. Just a big problem that you will always have with these cards, it's super weak to silence. You lose a lot if this one gets Iron Beak ult. But I like the card. The Death Rattle 5/5 from a 4 mana 1/1. I think it can be working out well. It's a inverse Nerubian Egg. Because the Nerubian Egg you just pay 2 less mana, and that's why it worked out so well all the time. But maybe it can work out in any way. Like it will be weaker than Nerubian Egg, but maybe it might be still get in place in some decks. I think people will try this card out quite a lot, because people like to play with Death Rattles. But it's gonna be hard maybe to make it work. I like the card. And here, what do we have? A priest card, Embrace the Shadow. This turn, your healing effect deals damage instead. So we have here a 2 mana Orkanai without getting the Orkanai, kind of. That's how I look at it. You are paying 2 less mana to get the Orkanai, or you pay 2 less mana than an Orkanai without getting any minion. You just get it for the effect. And it's only for this turn. So you have 1 turn where instead of healing, you deal damage instead. And Priest has some really good ways to do that. Like, imagine Circle of Healing. Imagine the Flash Heals, these cards. Like, that works really well for Priest. But will it be better than Orkanai? I mean, the Orkanai is just a 4 mana 3/5 with the same effect. And now you are paying 2 mana just for the effect without getting any minions. So you pay a card for this effect. And that is the thing I am worried about. Because you are losing a card, and Priest has already a pretty hard time. The weakness of Priest is situational cards and not drawing. And this is another card that just goes in the same problem. You have to play a card that it will always be situational. You are losing a card, you don't gain new cards, and you are already having like so much removal. Priest has so much removal. Like, I think this card is just like, you will have like really good combinations to get maybe OTKs off. Maybe that will work. But besides that, it's just, I don't think it can replace Orkanai at all. You're just losing a card for paying this effect. You don't want to pay a card for doing this effect 1 turn. It's so... you ask so much for it. So I think this card can, sadly... I think this card will not make it. It will be tested out a lot, I think, in OTK decks. I'm not really sure if that can work in any way. I mean, yeah, sure, you can deal together with the Prophet Velen. It might be a lot, but that is like an OTK at the end of the game. So maybe that will work, but it's still not really an OTK. You can only OTK yourself with Reno, guys. So don't try this card out. Don't try it out. Don't try it out. Play this card, go Reno Jackson. Don't do it. But yeah, I think the card will just not work out. I think you don't want to play this card together with Orkanai, and Orkanai is just better. Okay, and here we have the last card that is being revealed. We have Deathwing, a new dragon announced by Kipler. 10 mana, 12/12 dragon, Death Rattle. Put all dragons from your hand into the battlefield. So, yeah, how good is this card? I mean, the problem with Deathwing is it's too slow. That's the problem. And 10 mana, and Deathwing has a battle cry, guys. And this Deathwing, 10 mana, 12/12, like cool, it has pretty strong stats, really cool for 10 mana. But it doesn't even have a battle cry. It has a Death Rattle, put all dragons from your hand into the battlefield. So this card is uber slow. Like, there are no cards I think in the game that are slower than this one. 10 mana cards, Death Rattle. Like, super slow. So you need to play this card at turn 10. You need to consider that if you are having the time to play a 10 mana card on turn 10, consider if you are not already winning at all. Like, you're probably already winning easily if you are at that point where you have 10 mana. But 10 mana Death Rattle, like, it's so slow. Like, holy shit, it's slow. Like, the card is value-wise, sure, card is insane. You can get it. You put all dragons from your hand into the battlefield. But how many dragons are you gonna have at the end of the game? Like, you want to get this card maybe out of the deck somehow, but this card is so slow. Like, I just can't see this card working out well. I like the card a lot, but it's a really cool card. Like, Deathwing getting in his corrupted version instead of Battle Cry, it has more in Death Rattle. Make sure if you want to craft it or just enchant it, you do the right one, by the way. Don't make the wrong one. But yeah, I think this card is like, Deathwing is already not being played. He's already situational and slow. This card is just so slow. 10 mana Death Rattle, guys. Come on. 10 mana Death Rattle. Ragnaros, 8 mana, Great Battle Cry, not being played. Or not much being played. How can a 10 mana Death Rattle being played? I just can't see it. Maybe there's like some dragon deck that can run all these greedy, maybe like a Dragon Paladin or some other dragon deck. Dragon Mage, I can see it may be valuable. But it's super slow, guys. It is super slow. We'll see. Maybe you guys can... Maybe I will be surprised. The Death Rattle, of course, the value is insane. But the problem is you want to play dragons that don't have a battle cry to get them on board. And a lot of dragons have battle cries. So, Ysera is like the dream. We'll see. Maybe I get surprised, but for me this card is going to be way too slow. So, that was the review for this week. This was the weekly review for this time. Thanks for watching, guys, and we will get another review next week. And hopefully we can soon all play with these new awesome cards. Thanks for watching.